Welcome back. Thresholds and transits, I'm glad that you're here. Today we're going to talk about Aries season horoscopes, but from the Thema Mundi. So whole sign houses, Thema Mundi, with Cancer rising as the world ascendant. These horoscopes are written for your rising sign. If you do not know your rising sign, your sun sign will offer something, but your rising sign is more a precise read. And just a note, if you don't have your rising sign, you can go to one of the free softwares online. There's a bunch. There's some apps that you can use. The Chani app is really great. Astro.com, AstroSeek. The only thing that I would not recommend that you do is use a robot. The LLMs are wrong. And even though your chart is a mathematical point in the sky, it can't do it. So I talk to people all the time who have a wrong rising sign or have the wrong nodes or say that they're getting a horoscope from a robot and then it turns out to be completely false. So please don't use a robot. Either use a human or astrology software. It just doesn't do it. And it's not human. So it's missing the human piece. This is a robot-free channel. Other than thumbnails, I like to use robots for thumbnails. It makes things easier. I used to hire people to make thumbnails, but beside the point. Okay, we begin with Cancer, the ascendant of the world chart. The sun crosses into 0 degrees of Aries on March 20th in the Thema Mundi, the foundational world chart of Hellenistic astrology, documented by Vettius Valens in the anthology, and grounded in practice by Demetra George in Ancient Astrology in Theory and Practice. Aries falls in the 10th house of the world. The 10th house governs public life, reputation, and what you build that becomes visible, the work that you do that the world sees. So for every one of us, this Aries season carries a 10th house quality in the collective. So what are we becoming known for? What are we willing to be seen doing? An Aries season in this framework is asking you to show up publicly for something that really matters. What makes it worth doing? Layer that onto the fact that Saturn sits at 3 degrees of Aries and Neptune is at 1 degree of Aries, and the conjunction that has been cracking patriarchal structures since it perfected in February at 0 degrees. The Sun will conjoin Neptune around March 22nd and then Saturn around the 23rd. And the luminary of authority and visibility moves directly through the zone of dissolution and structural reckoning. What the Sun illuminates this season is the crack. And what's been growing underneath it, what's been growing inside of it since then. Mercury station direct on March 20th at 8 degrees Pisces, conjunct the North Node at 8 to 9 degrees Pisces, and what was processing in private is now ready to be spoken. Ceres entered Taurus on March 15th, and the mother who burned the world, demanding embodied nourishment, is in the sign of sustained material reality. So read this for your rising sign. We start with Cancer. Cancer rising. The sun is going through your 10th house. You are the ascendant of the world chart. Cancer rising is where the Thema Mundi begins, where the moon rules, where the primacy of the container over the spark is written into the architecture of the cosmos itself. You carry this in your body. The knowledge that what sustains is as important as what initiates, that the room that holds it as generative as the spark that ignites. Aries season activates your 10th house, the house of your public life, your career, your reputation, the work that makes you visible. The Sun, conjuncting Saturn and Neptune in your 10th house this week is intense. Saturn in your 10th asks, what structures of professional life are you being asked to reckon with honestly? Saturn here is the reality principle applied to your public self. What have you been performing that no longer reflects who you actually are? Neptune in the 10th, now joined by the Sun, is the dissolution of the professional fog. The image that you're maintaining, the version of yourself, the one that you're presenting to the world, is being illuminated. So some of what is revealed is going to feel like relief, and some will feel like exposure, and both are the same. I just left Greece. I'd been based out of Greece for 3 years, and sometimes the sun was warming, soothing, like an exhale. I could feel the freckles on my Irish American skin start to come out. I felt like a sigh of relief in the sun. And then there are other times where it was like an assault, where it was so bright and my eyes were fatigued and sunglasses didn't help. Nothing helped. I had to lower the awning on my balcony. Like nothing would hide from the sun. It felt violating. Some of this week is going to feel like that. Some of it is going to feel like warmth and reassurance and healing and nourishment. And some of it will feel like an assault. Both are the same. Mercury direct at 8 degrees Pisces lands in your 9th house. Philosophy, study, long distance movement, the expansion of what you know and how you speak about it. Something that you've been trying to articulate, a teaching, a framework, a body of work that has felt stuck is now moving. The North Node at 8 degrees Pisces in your 9th house says this movement is on purpose. It is directional. It is where your collective soul path is pointing. It is your evolution. So say the thing that has been forming in the dark. Ceres in Taurus is going through your 11th house, community, collective belonging, the groups and networks that you are a part of. Ceres here asks, what are you being nourished by in your communities? What is the sustenance real and where is it performance? The mother who burned the world wants embodied nourishment from the people that she gathers with. Superficial belonging doesn't hold under Ceres and Taurus. So what does? The question for Cancer risings is, what do you want to be publicly known for that actually reflects who you are in private? Leo rising. The sun is moving through your 9th house. The 9th house governs philosophy, teaching, long distance travel, legal systems, the frameworks by which you understand the world. For Leo rising, Aries season is lighting up the house of what you believe and how you speak about what you believe. The sun in Aries here is the spark of conviction meeting the house of ideology. You are being called to say out loud what you actually think, not the diplomatic version, not the version that keeps the peace, not the version that has you be adored, what you actually think. The sun, moving through Neptune at 1 degree Aries and Saturn at 3 degrees, is in your 9th house. Neptune here has been dissolving old belief systems, old philosophies, the frameworks that you inherited or adopted that no longer fit the life that you're actually living. You may have noticed over the last 6 weeks that the things that you once believed with certainty felt porous. The certainty is not returning. What's happening is it's clearing. The fog of received wisdom is lifting. And what's underneath is a truer, less comfortable, more honest account of what you actually know and what you do not know. Saturn arriving in your 9th and now the sun conjuncting both is the moment of reckoning with all of that honesty. What you actually believe. Not what you were taught, not what's socially acceptable. What do you know in your body to be true? Leo is ruled by the sun. This is your luminary making its annual return to visibility. The sun in the 9th for Leo rising is particularly charged. Your identity, your vitality, your essential self is being called to express itself through the medium of ideas and philosophy and speaking what you know. This is a season for writing and teaching and putting the actual framework into the world rather than just the acceptable version of it. Mercury direct in your 8th house, conjunct the North Node. The 8th house governs shared resources, transformation, what's held in common and what must be released. So something about money and inheritance and shared finances, or a deep psychological truth that has been stuck in retrograde is ready to move forward. The North Node here says that this is directional movement. It points toward where your growth is, what your evolution is. So the question for you, Leo risings, what truth have you been softening for the sake of the room? And what would happen if you stopped softening? Virgo rising. The sun is moving through your 8th house. The 8th house is the house of transformation, Shared resources, death and inheritance, the resources that come from others, the deep interior work that cannot be rushed or performed. And for Virgo rising, this season lights up exactly that territory that Virgo finds most difficult. It's the place where analysis runs out and surrender becomes necessary. The 8th house demands that you release control of outcome. It demands that you sit with what cannot be fixed or organized or improved through effort. The Sun, conjoining Neptune and Saturn in your 8th house, brings two distinct pressures simultaneously. Neptune in your 8th has been dissolving the boundaries around shared resources and intimacy, shared psychological territory, where you thought you knew where you ended and another person began. Neptune is softening all of those edges. So there may have been confusion about money that belongs to both of you, about the nature of a close bond, about what you owe and what you are owed. Saturn arriving in the 8th, now joined by the Sun, is that moment of clarity after the dissolution. So the fog is lifting for a moment. What remains visible is what is actually true about your entanglement with others. Some of what is revealed is going to require renegotiation. Virgo rising tends to want to fix things immediately. The 8th house is asking you first to feel the full weight of what is being revealed before moving to a solution. Adrienne Rich wrote in Of Woman Born that the labor of transformation, the labor of making something new out of what has been destroyed, has always been women's work. The 8th house is exactly that labor. It's hard. It's invisible. It's happening in the interior, in the dark, at the cellular level. Virgo rising, this Aries season is doing the 8th house work. It looks like nothing's happening on the outside, but it is everything. Mercury direct in Pisces lands in your 7th house of partnership, something in a close relationship, professional or personal, that has been unclear or stalled, is ready to be spoken clearly. The North Node in your 7th house says this movement in partnership is directional. Growth lives in the conversation that you have been postponing. So the question for Virgo risings, what shared resource, financial, emotional, or psychological, needs to be renegotiated with honesty rather than managed with efficiency? Libra risings, the Sun moving through your 7th house. The 7th house governs partnership, marriage, one-to-one relationships, open enemies, and the contracts we make with others. For Libra rising, Aries season illuminates your partnership access. The Sun in Aries in your 7th is the spotlight on how you relate, what you commit to, what you are willing to claim in the context of close bonds. Saturn and Neptune in your 7th house is doing significant work on your partnerships. Saturn here tests the structural integrity of your commitments. Every relationship it touches gets assessed. Is this built on something real, or is it held together by habit or convenience or even fear of the alternative? Neptune in the 7th simultaneously has been dissolving the idealized images you hold of your partners and of yourself in relationship. The partner you thought you knew may become less legible. A significant bond may be revealed to have more complexity than you know. The Sun, moving through this week, brings these revelations into full visibility. Libra is ruled by Venus, and Venus is currently in Aries, which is in your 7th house. Venus is in the sign of detriment. So in Aries, it's stripped of all of its diplomacy, its social grace, the careful management of how things appear. Venus in Aries wants what it wants right now, with no negotiation. For Libra rising, it's both uncomfortable and clarifying to see Venus this way. So what do you actually want from your partnerships before the diplomatic layer? What would you ask for if you were not managing the other person's response? Juno, the asteroid of committed partnership and contractual equality, is relevant here. In Hellenistic framework, she is not the devoted wife. She's the one who demanded the terms of the arrangement be honored. This Aries season asks Libra Libra, to be Juno, to name what the terms of your significant partnerships actually are, what has been agreed and what has been assumed, and whether those terms still serve you. Mercury direct in Pisces activates your 6th house of daily work, health, and embodied practice. Something in your daily routine, your health practices, or your work structure has been in limbo, and it's now ready to move. So tend to your body, listen to your body, make the appointment, restructure the daily rhythm that has stopped serving you. The question for Libra rising: what do you want from your closest partnerships that you have been too careful to say directly? Scorpio risings, my brothers and sisters, the sun is moving through our 6th house. The 6th house governs daily work, health, the body rhythms, service, and what astrologers call the work of survival. It's the labor that keeps the structure of a life functioning. For Scorpio rising, Aries season illuminates the machinery of our daily existence. And the 6th house is hard, right? It's the house of what has to be done. We have to work, what the body requires, what the work demands day after day without exception. Saturn in our 6th house has been restructuring our daily labor. The routines that were not working have been made undeniable. The health issues that were manageable now demand attention. The work structures that were inefficient broke down enough to force rebuilding. Neptune in the 6th added a layer of confusion to this restructuring, the fog around what is our body telling us, the difficulty of knowing which daily practice is actually sustaining us and which is habit without function. And the sun, now moving through both planets this week, brings the body's truth into visibility. We cannot ignore it anymore, so listen to it. Scorpio rising is ruled by Mars. Mars is the planet of force, initiative, and the capacity to cut through. In the 6th sense, in the 6th house, Mars energy wants to drive through the daily work, to push the body, to get things done. Saturn in Aries in the 6th is asking us to apply that force with discipline rather than brute force. The body has limits. The work has limits. This Aries season is asking us work within those limits rather than through them. The most effective labor is sustainable, not heroic. Ceres in Taurus is moving through our 7th house of partnership. The mother who demands embodied nourishment is in our relationship sector. What are our closest partnerships actually feeding us? And where are we running on empty in the context of others? Ceres in Taurus in the 7th asks for material, tangible reciprocity. Feeling loved is not enough. Where are we actually receiving? And the question for us, Scorpio risings, this Aries season, what is our body asking for that our drive and discipline have been overriding? Sagittarius rising. The sun is moving through your 5th house. The 5th house governs creativity, children, pleasure, erotic life, play, and the expression of the self that is not in service to anyone else's needs. For Sagittarius rising, Aries season lights up the house of our creative and erotic life. The 5th house in the Thema Mundi is the house of what you make purely for the joy of making it. What brings you alive? And what do you do when no one is telling you what to do? Saturn and Neptune in your 5th house have been working on your relationship to pleasure and creativity and self-expression. Saturn in the 5th tests whether your creative life is built on genuine expression or on the performance of creativity for external validation. Neptune in the 5th dissolves the idealized image you hold of your creative self and your erotic life. The fog around what you actually desire, what genuinely brings you pleasure rather than what you think should bring you pleasure. It's been thickening. The sun is now moving through this conjunction and it's illuminating the truth of your creative and your erotic desire. What do you actually want to make? And what brings you alive? Audre Lorde, in Uses of the Erotic, writes that the erotic is not only sexual, It is the feeling of deep satisfaction that accompanies any act undertaken from the fullness of what we are, rather than obligation or performance. Sagittarius rising, this Aries season is being asked to locate that feeling and follow it. The fifth house with Aries sun is fire in the house of fire. The creative impulse is strong, and the question is whether you are directing it toward what genuinely satisfies you or toward what you think you should be creating. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, and Jupiter is currently at 15 degrees Cancer in your 8th house. Jupiter in the 8th expands what is available through your shared resources, through intimacy, through the deep interior work. There is abundance available to you right now in the places that you've been willing to go deep. This is the season to let that interior expansion fuel your creative expression. And the question for you, Sagittarius risings, is what would you create if you were making it entirely for the feeling of making it and no audience in mind? Capricorn rising. The sun is moving through your 4th house. The 4th house governs home, family of origin, ancestry, private life, the foundations beneath the visible structure of your life. For Capricorn rising, Aries season illuminates the place that you return to, the roots that either sustain or constrain you, the interior architecture of your private world. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, the planet of structure, discipline, long-term consequence. With Saturn now in Aries in your 4th house, you've been in a sustained reckoning with the foundations of your life. Saturn in the 4th is a serious transit. It asks, what is the structural reality of your home and your family life, stripped of the story that you've been telling about it? Neptune in your 4th house has been creating fog around all of those foundations and making it difficult to see clearly what your home situation actually is, what your family patterns actually are, what are you actually carrying from your ancestry. The sun moving through both planets this week is that moment of illumination. So what has been unclear about your home and family and private life becomes visible in the clear light of day rather than in the fog of Neptune's confusion. This can feel destabilizing for Capricorn rising, whose entire orientation is towards structure and solidarity and long-term foundation. Being shown that your foundations need reworking is uncomfortable, but Saturn in the 4th is your ruling planet in your house of roots. It's a gift. You have the capacity and the discipline to rebuild from a more honest foundation than the one that you've been standing on. You know how Saturn is. Saturn always rewards. It just takes a long time. The reckoning is a gift, and it is the beginning of something structurally true that you knew needed to rebuild. Virginia Woolf wrote in A Room of One's Own that we must have the material conditions of our lives secured before we can create from our full capacity. For Capricorn rising this Aries season, the material conditions of your private life are being assessed and, where necessary, restructured. So do the work, secure the foundation. What gets built afterward is built on something real. And the question for you, Capricorn rising, is what truth about your home and family or private foundation have you been managing around rather than addressing? Aquarius rising. The sun is moving through your 3rd house. The 3rd house governs communication, local community, siblings, short distance movement, and the everyday exchange of language and information. For Aquarius rising, Aries season lights up the house of how you speak, what you say in the immediate world around you, and who you say it to. The sun in Aries in your 3rd is the spark of initiative in the house of language. You are being called to speak directly, to say the thing without the diplomatic cushioning, and to let your words carry the weight of what you actually mean. I gotta take my sweater off. I'm having a hot flash. Okay. Saturn and Neptune in your 3rd house have been doing complex work on your relationship to communication. Saturn here tests the integrity of what you say. Are your words aligned with what your actual position Or have you been speaking in ways that maintain social comfort at the cost of honesty? Neptune in the third created fog around what you know and how you communicate it. So there was probably confusion in some conversations, messages that were misread, information that was unclear or incomplete. The sun is moving through this conjunction, illuminates the communication landscape. What needs to be said clearly is now available to be said. Mercury direct in Pisces lands in your second house of resources, values, and material security. Something about how you earn, what you value, or your relationship to material stability has been processing in retrograde and is now ready to move forward. The North Node here says this forward movement is the territory of your values and resources. It's directional. There's growth available in clarifying what you actually value and aligning your material life with those values rather than the inherited or assumed values. Bell Hooks in Feminist Theory, From Margin to Center, wrote that authentic communication requires the willingness to be in discomfort, to say what is true even when the social cost is real. Aquarius rising, this Aries season is being asked for that authentic communication in the local, immediate, daily sphere. The world changes at the level of the conversation in front of you. The question for Aquarius rising: what have you been saying in the diplomatic version? And what would happen if you said the direct version instead? Pisces risings, the sun is moving through your second house. The second house governs resources, money, material possessions, what you own, what you earn, and the values that structure your relationship to material life. For Pisces rising, Aries season lights up your relationship to money and material security. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter in the traditional Hellenistic framework, and Jupiter is currently in Cancer in your fifth house, expanding the creative and the erotic dimensions of your life. So the abundance available to you right now is in the domain of what you make, what you can create, what brings you alive. The question this Aries season asks is whether you can let that creative abundance translate into material security. Saturn and Neptune in your second house have been restructuring and dissolving your relationship to money simultaneously. Saturn in the second is the reality principle applied to your finances. What is the actual state of your material life without the story that you tell yourself about it? What structures around money need to be built, maintained, or dismantled? Neptune in the second has made it genuinely difficult to see your financial situation clearly. There's been confusion around income, spending, what's coming in, what's going out. The sun, moving through both planets this week, illuminates the financial landscape with unsparing clarity. What you see will probably require adjustment. See it anyway. Mercury has been retrograde in your first house in Pisces itself and stations direct at 8 degrees of Pisces this week, conjunct the North Node. Your first house governs your body, your identity, your immediate presence in the world. Mercury retrograde in your first house has been an internal review of your self-presentation, your sense of self, and the story you say about who you are. Mercury direct on the North Node means this review is complete, the direction is clear, and something about how you present yourself, how you inhabit your own identity is ready to be seen and move forward. The North Node says this is intentional, it's growth. The question for you, Pisces risings: what material structure does your life need that you have been leaving to Neptune? The question for Pisces rising this Aries season: what material structure does your life need that you have been leaving to Neptune, to faith, and to the hope that it works out on its own? Aries rising, the sun is moving through your first house. The sun is in your sign. Happy birthday. It is in your body. No. In the house of your identity, your physical presence, the self you bring into every room. This is your season in the most literal sense. The annual solar return to your first house is the moment of self-assertion, of visibility, of the self claiming its right to take up space in the world. And yet, Saturn is in your first house at 3 degrees of Aries, Neptune at 1. The sun conjoins both this week. This is not a season of uncomplicated self-expression. Saturn in the first house is the reality principle applied to your identity itself. Who are you, actually, when we strip the performance away? What version of you have you been presenting to the world that doesn't match the interior reality? Saturn here is uncomfortable. It tends to produce a feeling of heaviness and being seen too clearly, and that like assault from the sun that we talked about, not being able to maintain that image. The discomfort is the gift. The image that's dissolving under Neptune, it was wrong anyway, so let it go. What's being revealed is actually you. Mars rules Aries. Mars is your ruling planet. This is a season of enormous energy and initiative that is available to you. But Saturn conjunct Neptune in the first requires that the energy be directed with precision rather than scattered across multiple fronts. The temptation for Aries rising is to begin everything all at once. Saturn says, begin one thing, the right thing. Begin it with full weight of your actual self, not the version that you think you should be. Adrienne Rich, in Of Woman Born, describes the moment of claiming one's own experience as distinct from the institution's account of their experience. The moment when the gap between what was said about you and what you know becomes undeniable. Aries rising this season is that moment. The sun, Saturn, and Neptune in your first house are creating the conditions for that reckoning. What do you know yourself to be underneath every story that was told about you? The question for Aries rising, who are you when you are not performing who you're supposed to be? Taurus risings, the sun is moving through your 11th house. The 11th house governs collective belonging, community, friendship networks, shared goals, the groups that you move through, and the causes you align yourself with. For Taurus rising, Aries season illuminates your relationship to community and collective. The sun in Aries in your 11th asks, what communities are you choosing, and do those choices reflect your actual values rather than your social habits? Saturn and Neptune in your 11th house have been doing structural and dissolving work on your communities simultaneously. Saturn here tests the integrity of your collective affiliations. Which of the groups that you belong to are built on genuine shared values, and what are you just maintaining through inertia? Neptune in the 11th had created fog around where you actually belong. A community that once felt like home may become less legible, or you may have found yourself drawn to spaces that don't fit the story that you've told about yourself. The sun illuminating both planets this week clarifies the community landscape. What is really nourishing you in your collective life, and what is taking more than it gives? Taurus is ruled by Venus. Venus is currently in Aries in your 11th house, in the sign of its detriment, stripped of its usual ease and grace. Venus in Aries wants belonging on direct terms, without the performance of likability. For Taurus rising, whose instinct is to maintain harmony and cohesion in all community spaces, this is clarifying. What do you really want from the groups that you move through before the accommodating layer kicks in? Where are you softening yourself to fit? And where do you fit as you really are? Ceres entered Taurus on March 15th, moving through your first house. Ceres in the first house is the mother arriving in your body, in your immediate presence, in the way you take up space in the world. Ceres in Taurus in the first demands embodied nourishment for the self, what your body really is asking for. What does your physical self need that you've been deprioritizing? The mother who burned the world to get her daughter back is in your first house. She doesn't accept symbolism. She wants the real thing. The question for Taurus rising, Which of your communities is asking you to grow, and which are asking you to say the same? Gemini risings. The sun is moving through your 12th house. The 12th house is the house of what is hidden, what is in retreat, what operates beneath the threshold of ordinary consciousness. In the Thema Mundi, the 12th house carries the energy of what Valens called the bad daemon, the hidden adversary, the self-undoing, the place where we do not acknowledge about ourselves. It finds a way to act without our conscious direction. For Gemini rising, Aries season moves this through the most interior of our houses. This is the season of retreat, of interior work, of attending to what operates in the subterranean levels of your psyche. The sun conjoining Saturn and Neptune in your 12th house is a powerful and unusual configuration. Saturn in the 12th brings structure to what has been formless in your interior life. The fears, self-limiting patterns, and the ways that you've been working against yourself without knowing it are being made visible. They're named and they're more available to be addressed. Neptune in the 12th is in its natural territory. Neptune rules dissolution, the oceanic, the place where the self's edges become permeable. And in the 12th house, Neptune can produce profound spiritual depth or profound confusion. The sun illuminating this configuration asks you to bring your full consciousness to what has been operating in the dark. Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury, stationed direct this week at 8 degrees of Pisces, conjunct the North Node in your 10th house of public life and career. Something in your professional life or your public reputation or the work that you do is visible to the world, and that has been in retrograde review and is now ready to move. The North Node in your 10th house says this forward movement is directional, it's evolutionary. The clarity that's been forming about your public path is ready to be acted on. The interior work of this 12th house, Aries season, is not separate from that public movement. They're connected. So what's being resolved in the hidden places also fuels what's becoming visible. Bell Hooks, in Feminist Theory, From Margin to Center, writes that the most radical act is often the interior one. The moment of recognizing the ways that we have internalized the structures that constrain us. Gemini rising, this Aries season is the interior moment. The 12th house work is action. It is the work that makes the action that follows true. So the question for Gemini risings: what interior pattern, fear, or self-limiting belief is ready to be named and addressed rather than managed around? The sun moves through Aries for 1 month. It conjoins Neptune at 1 degree and around March 22nd, and Saturn at 3 degrees around March 23rd. It spends the rest of its transit through Aries building towards the next ingress. Each of your lives is being lit up in a specific house, a specific domain with a specific set of questions. And the Thema Mundi is unflattering these questions into generic encouragement. There's no recommendations for journaling and baths here. The 10th house for Cancer rising is a different ask than the 10th house for Capricorn rising in the 4th. The cosmos is very precise. Your life is specific. And these readings, I think, honor that specificity. So we start at Cancer because the world starts at Cancer. The moon rules the world chart. The container is the origin. And whatever your rising sign, you are living inside that container, inside the year that begins when the light reaches the house of the body, inside the structure that names the moon as the first luminary of the cosmos. So the sun is in Aries. The crack has been lit. Here we go.